So menstrual cycle training is a really big trend at the moment, and it grinds my gears because if you've heard what I've said before on this interview, everyone's period is different. And if we blanket everyone being like, "Oh, you're in your follicular phase, you have to train like this," then some people might be training appropriately, but others might actually be undertraining.
You're listening to Becoming MatchFit, the podcast helping athletes and high performers build confidence, clarity, and opportunity on and off the field. I'm your host, Nick Greentree. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. The information in this episode is for general education only and isn't personalised medical or health advice. Every athlete is different, so please make sure you speak with a qualified health professional before making changes to your training, nutrition, or wellbeing routines. All right, let's dive in. Today, I am talking with the amazing Jess Stoll. She is the director of the Female Collective, a women's health educator, the team physio for NRLW Dragons and Samoan team, and also the founder of Project FEM. Welcome, Jess.
Thanks so much, Nick. I'm very excited for this.
Excellent. Me too. So very extensive bio there. Congratulations. You're doing amazing things in this space. And we're super excited to have the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, let's get into it. So the topic today is managing the menstrual cycle for peak performance. This is an incredible space to chat about. For some people, it might be a bit uncomfortable, but I think that's why we need to talk about it. So yeah, you sharing your expertise is super exciting. Thank you. Yeah, no worries. It is often a bit of a taboo sort of subject, especially, not that long ago, it was like the silent phenomenon that women just it happened to women, and it's only really now where we're like, actually, women aren't just small men. There's very different things that happen to them, particularly with their physiology, and that can have a really big impact on their performance.
So you have done an article for MatchFit. So thank you for that. And anyone who hasn't read the article, what is the biggest myth that female athletes need to stop believing about their bodies?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ones would be that periods are always a negative experience for every single athlete. That is very true for some, don't get me wrong, and depending on what sort of sport you play, your intensity levels, your age, all of that sort of stuff, there are a high percentage of athletes that says it has a negative impact on their performance. But then you've got just as many that say it doesn't actually impact their performance, or they feel like it improves their performance. So the key takeaway there is everyone's menstrual cycle is individual, and we can't blanket everyone saying, oh, periods are bad, we need to get rid of them or find ways to sort of like stop athletes from having them. Let's try and put a positive spin on them and be like, let's try and use them to try and allow our athletes to have an improved performance and, perform without them impacting them at all, basically.
Amazing. That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
So can you break down, like in simple terms, how the menstrual cycle affects performance and recovery?
Yeah, of course. So I think the first thing would be, what exactly is your menstrual cycle and what's it sort of broken up to, especially in terms of phases. So your menstrual cycle is the normally regular fluctuations in female sex hormones that basically prepare your body for pregnancy. Normally kick off around puberty and last a good couple of years until someone starts to experience the good old life changes that is perimenopause and menopause. And there's two main hormones that impact this. There's several, but these are the main ones. We've got estrogen and progesterone. And these two hormones fluctuate in a normally regulating flow sort of pattern. And so the other big thing to know about these is that there's different phases of your menstrual cycle, and these different phases mean those hormones are doing different things at different times. So if we look at day one of your period, which is normally the first day that you're bleeding, that's obviously you're menstruating. So generally those two hormones of estrogen and progesterone are quite low, but then you've got other things in your body that tend to give you those classic menstrual cycle symptoms. For some, not everyone. So you've got these things called prostaglandins, and they're almost pro-inflammatory type things. So they can give you that sort of cramping, the discomfort, the hunger, all of that kind of stuff. And it's really important because that's what's making the uterus contract, so you can actually get rid of your period. Then once your period stops, you enter into your follicular phase. So generally both of those hormones are quite low, and they're not really impacting your performance or your ability to live and do stuff on a daily basis. So we classically say women are most like men in this phase because their hormones aren't doing much. You can go about your stuff without any influence. Then what typically happens around halfway through your period If you've got a 28-day cycle, that'll be roughly around day 14. You've got your estrogen that starts to rise, and we have a ovulation that occurs. So that's where an egg is released from your ovary. And with that increase in estrogen, some people can notice it. You can have a bit of ovulation-based pain, others not so much. But then that peak in estrogen can do different things to your body. So we know that estrogen is quite helpful when there's inflammation on board. So it can help you recover, particularly after you've had a big training session. We know that estrogen increases your force production. So you actually might feel a bit stronger when your ovulation is peaking nice and high. But then we also know that increase in ovulation can make your ligaments a little bit loose than others. So pros and cons depending on who you are. Then what happens is estrogen drops back off. And then we have that back end of your cycle, which is called your luteal phase. So both your hormones, estrogen and progesterone, start to rise in this back end. And often this is where people can experience that typical PMS type symptoms or premenstrual syndrome, where you might get that increased appetite, might have a little bit more fatigue. You might find that you're just not performing as well as you normally would. But again, it's very individual. And that's because your hormones are really busy. They're doing lots of different things to potentially prepare your body for a pregnancy. When your brain realizes, okay, there's no egg that's been fertilized here, those hormones drop off and then you have your period. And that's your menstrual cycle.
Amazing. There's lots going on,
There
right?
is, yeah.
And I think we, often don't acknowledge that because we've all got busy lives. We've all got to get on with them. And everyone, like you said, has different symptoms and has different levels of awareness about their body too. So yeah, I think that the more that we know about this space, the better. So thank you. That was awesome. Okay. So next question. What are the red flags that athletes should stop ignoring about their menstrual cycles and performance?
Yep. So I've got a couple of big ones here. Probably the first one would be any sort of changes to duration. So the classic missed period. You talk to most people and they say, oh, great, I haven't had my period this month. How good has it been? But really, that's not a great thing. Missing periods for like repeated periods in a row or having your menstrual cycle be a little bit irregular could indicate a potential underlying health condition or a mismatch between your energy that you're burning and the energy getting in from your fueling. The other big one would be pain. So we know that women's pain in particular is often dismissed, which is quite disheartening. But any sort of period-based pain that can't be controlled by over-the-counter medications like your Panadols and Eurofins, or can't be controlled by your classic hormonal contraceptives like the pill, isn't normal. And we actually want to do something about that and seek help from a trusted medical professional to try and get on top of that. And then the last one would be flow. So if you find that your period is really, really heavy, it's lasting quite a long time. So anything longer than 7 days of menstrual bleeding is considered abnormal. Or if you find you're flooding through your menstrual products. So if you're only using a super tampon, it's lasting you an hour before you have to change it again. That's a really, really heavy flow. The usual blood loss for someone on their menstrual cycle for that whole entire cycle is 30 to 60 mils. And it is a little bit hard to measure unless you've got a menstrual cup, of course. But if you're bleeding more than that, that can definitely impact, obviously, your fatigue, and it can affect your iron levels, which ultimately then affect your ability to do your job and to play sport.
Okay, thank you. We see so many athletes normalizing pain or irregular periods. When does that become a performance or a health risk?
Yeah, a great question. So to back it up a little bit, I like to think of periods or your menstrual cycle as a vital sign. So it's just like your blood pressure, your heart rate, your respiration rate. It gives you really invaluable cues of how well your body is functioning. If your period is regular, it's tolerable, you're not losing too much blood, generally it's a good indication that everything in your body is great. And we have to have great health to achieve great performance. It can often be the first sign that there might be something going on that's not quite right in your body. So, for example, if you're losing your period for 3 months where it was previously regular, or it was regular and all of a sudden it goes to being a bit irregular for 6 months, then I would definitely want to flag that with a trusted source to try and investigate what could be going on there.
Excellent. Great tip. Okay. So, what are 2 to 3 practical tips that an athlete can start to do this week to work through their cycle?
Cool. All right. So I've got 2. And the first one is really the biggest one. Let's collect data. We know that athletes love data, whether they love it or not, but their performance staff do, that's for sure. So we want to actually track your period. I don't know about you, but unless I had my app, I couldn't tell you what my period was like 3 periods ago. So we need to collect this data so we can actually then use it to our advantage. So there's lots of different apps that you have available. There's new ones popping up almost every week, but you've got the classics like Flow, Clue, Stardust. All of these are really fantastic apps. I would just caution they do collect your data. So if you're worried about that, just go with the oldie but a goodie, which is just your diary or your calendar in your phone. Putting a little emoji on the calendar on the days that you have your period is a great place to start. So the first thing would really just be sort of tracking your period, and all you have to really start with is your duration. So just recording when you're actually bleeding, because then you can calculate your period length, your cycle length, and all of that sort of stuff, which is cool. And the second one is seek help. Once you sort of the penny drops and you're like, wow, actually there is a little bit going on. I'm not quite happy with this with my menstrual cycle. Go and talk to people about it. Unfortunately, in this day and age, with our medical system the way it is, it might mean you have to sort of self-advocate a little bit to make sure that you're being heard. And if you go somewhere and you're not getting the answers you want, or you feel like you're getting dismissed, go somewhere else. Keep hunting until you feel like you've been listened to and someone's taking you and your symptoms seriously.
Great tips. Thank you. And I think most females can relate to that. Whether or not you're an athlete, it's always, keep hunting for the advice that feels right for you as well.
Exactly.
You've got your body, even though you're seeking the answers, but you've got to really keep going there.
Absolutely.
What's something on social media about women's health that drives you crazy just because it's wrong?
Okay, controversial, but I see it everywhere. And like, I'm not on TikTok, but I see it all over Instagram. And people tell me this when they come to the clinic is the blanket rule that people should train a certain way at certain phases of their period. So menstrual cycle training is a really big trend at the moment. And it grinds my gears because if you've heard what I've said before in this interview, everyone's period is different. And if we blanket everyone being like, you're in your follicular phase, you have to train like this, then some people might be training appropriately, but others might actually be undertraining. So the biggest thing is know what feels good for your body. Let's make all your training specific to you as possible.
Excellent words there. And it makes complete sense. Okay, if you could teach every coach one thing about the female cycle, what would it be?
So periods aren't scary. Periods are not taboo. It is not a female problem that you get to sort of like skirt around the edges. Be informed, get curious, learn what makes your female athletes special. And that includes things like the menstrual cycle, so that we're breaking down barriers to communication. Let's make sure that we're considering these things and making sure that athletes, once you know information and you start that conversation, it tends to break down barriers. So having that open dialogue, having it something that you consider. And if you're not sure, ask questions and be informed.
So just tell me what inspired Project FEM and what was the gap that you saw in schools, clubs and workplaces?
Yeah. So basically, women and girls don't know enough about their bodies, period. On the menstrual cycle. And I see it like I've worked as a physio for over 10 years in the clinic, been an athlete myself, been around sort of different coaches and different environments pretty much my whole teenage to adult life. And we just don't know enough about our bodies at all to actually know what essentially is normal. So then we can figure out if we need to seek help or not. But then what ways can we actually understand it better and get the most out of it? And there's basically a huge knowledge gap when it comes to female health, and that's generationally. And where do we go to as women to get information about our bodies first and foremost? And it's our mums, it's our grandmas. And they didn't know enough about it. And then our mums didn't know enough about it. And then so we're sort of coming in a bit more underdone as well. So there's lots of information sources out there, and a lot of them are, because everyone's body is individual, are very relevant to that person that may be very specific to you. So there's lots of misinformation out there. There's lots of, obviously, that disparity in the health services about women being able to access good quality healthcare as well. So all of those things combined basically inspired me to be like, we need to teach people about their bodies, and let's try and do it in a really fun way that comes from a little bit of a sporting background, of course. So we're getting that bit of engagement, but performance ultimately is in anything that you want to do, whether it's sport, whether it's at school, whether it's in the office, whether it's at home, anything like that.
Yeah, you're right. We don't have one body for sport and then one body for work. It
Yeah.
carries through everything. So obviously it impacts everything. What problems are young women and girls telling you that they are struggling with?
There are so many things. I guess the big one would be menstrual cycle dysfunction. So whether or not people experiencing the classics. Their period pain is that bad that you're having to take days off school, you can't train and go and do your part-time job because your period pain's that bad. They've been to their GP and they've was told just to go on the pill, but their sister had a really bad experience on the pill, so they don't want to go on it. All of these sort of things. I've got people that are young girls that are in a single dad household and their dads don't know anything about how to insert a tampon or what menstrual cycle products are the right ones for them. People don't have a good place to go. And then we've got, obviously, we want our young girls to keep being involved in sport. We know it's so important for their development. It's for their, professional careers later on. But girls that aren't exercising because they don't know what sports bra they need to get. Like the list sort of goes on, and it's quite interesting. Every time I go and present at a school, I get hit with something different. Like, for example, I went to one school and I had a young individual who was transitioning and was like, I don't know what I need to do what binders do I need to get that's comfortable for me. So they didn't really have anyone to ask these questions before. So to have just that, I guess, open dialogue and create that space is really exciting.
Amazing. Well done. You brought up about the sports bras. And I remember a conversation we had a while back when I was learning about the challenges or the lack of information around those sports bras. And I remember you explaining that some females are wearing a swimsuit and then putting tape around their around their breasts on top of that because they're not actually fitted properly for sports bras, it blew my mind. So I think, anything that we can do for education and helping them get access as well. Access is also another problem for people and financially. So that's a whole other thing we can talk about another time.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
What makes Project FEM different from other wellbeing programs out there, Jess?
So the two big things are that I'm a health professional. So I'm a physio, but I'm also a women's health physio as well. So this is the area that I spend most of my days in the clinic. But then I've also got my sporting background. So I sort of cross the bridge between the two worlds of being performance and athletic development. But then also we've got the medical side. So all of the information that I deliver is obviously evidence-based. It's practical. It's stuff that I teach to people who, come in the clinic and actually access my services as well. So that point of difference I feel is really important. It's a sort of not just your PE teacher that's telling you this sort of stuff. It's actually someone that's worked in this industry for a very, very long time.
Awesome. And you have delivered this program across many clubs and schools as well. What's one of the main things that you see that female athletes come away from after they've done your program?
It breaks down the taboo and it facilitates dialogue, basically. So I don't know how many times, it's the best feeling ever when you walk out of a presentation and the room is buzzing. So there's groups of people that are like talking about, their favorite bras, or, you've got young girls coming up to me asking lots of different things about their period and, how scary is a menstrual cup? Like there's lots of different sort of things that people come up with, but it just starts the conversation. And then from that, in an ideal world, I'm really hoping that people are then sort of talking amongst their peers, they're talking to their parents, they're talking to their support staff to actually make change and consider these things that they might not have otherwise done.
Yeah, amazing. So for a club or a school listening to this chat today, what does working with you actually look like?
So if you wanted to do a Project FEM workshop, and there's lots of different ones that I run, I basically have a list of core modules that everyone can sort of pick from. And there's lots of different things, from things like the menstrual cycle, obviously, things like relative energy deficiency in sport, breast health. And basically what I get each club or school to do is pick the topics that they think are most relevant to their cohort. And then I basically make it age appropriate or sports specific as much as I can to then deliver that information. So the aim of the game is to make the information that I'm delivering as sort of bespoke to that group as possible.
Excellent. That sounds great. And so you've also started delivering Project FEM to corporates. I love this idea, but tell me, what's going on there and how does that all work? How does that translate across from the sports world to the corporates?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it a little bit before, but performance isn't just for the sporting field. Performance is across everything that we do. So it makes good sense that and we'd want to push it into a space that is trying to achieve excellence. And that classic saying where, you need to have good health to achieve good performance, this is exactly the same. So making sure that the little things are being considered so that, people can work to their very best, achieve their goals, and ultimately have a really supportive work environment as well.
And I'm going to assume as well, given that the span of the female reproductive system, it kicks in so early. We're all going through changes all throughout our lives, and so many women are working. So how does that pan out? And just calling it out there. I'm at the latter end of that. Any people in corporate that might be going through perimenopause, and you're like, how am I dealing with everything that I used to handle really well? Now I feel a little bit different, and how is that affecting me? So is that something that you can kind of touch on as well for
Yeah,
those guys?
totally. Like, you think about how overwhelming and chaotic it can feel to be a teenager. We talk about perimenopause and menopause like menolescence, basically
Mm,
the reverse of all those things you were going through as a teenager. So I think to have a bit of a safe haven or some access to good information to help you navigate that space is, vital, really. It should be a non-issue. We should be doing it already, to be honest, because women are a very important part of the workforce. We do lots of different roles and have different forms of capacity. So just assist them into performing their job. It should just be a basic necessity, really.
Okay, so for Project FEM, like, what's your big vision?
I want to just help educate as many women and as many girls as I possibly can. Let's go big with this. Knowledge is power, and I'm such a big believer in that. And if I can just, drop one knowledge bomb, it is big or small, for an individual that just helps empower them to advocate for themselves, particularly in the health space, but then obviously to try and help them achieve and perform in whatever capacity they want to, then I'm a happy camper.
Amazing. You're doing great things already, Jess. So you're well on
Thank
your
you.
way. Okay, if you could give one piece of advice to female athletes struggling with confidence or consistency, what would it be?
I think that being kind to yourself is just a mantra we should all sort of carry around. Like, we don't have to have all of the answers. I think it's unrealistic to expect female athletes or women in general to be able to just go about things without batting an eyelid. Like, we're human first and foremost. So if we can just sort of acknowledge that and just be a bit gentle here and there, I think that it speaks volumes, and it's going to set you up to have a really fantastic relationship with yourself, which then can lead to whatever else you want to do, basically.
Where can people find out more or learn about Project FEM if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, so probably the best way to go about it is to find us on social, so Instagram or Facebook, and shoot me a DM, or the other one would be by email.
Well, thank you, Jess, for your time and your expertise. It was such a treat to chat with you. And I would love to do further chats with you because there's so much to talk about in this space.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. I think if this interview length has been any indication, I could talk about this stuff all day. So, yeah, very happy to support wherever I can.
Thanks so much for listening to Becoming MatchFit. If today's conversation inspired you, feel free to share it with a teammate or someone you love as well. You can access free tools, resources, and our community in MatchFit 360 Academy. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, unlock your value, change your game, and become MatchFit.